Have you ever felt like your mind is a messy desk? Thoughts piling up, schedules overlapping, emotions slipping away before you can even touch them. I used to live like that, constantly in a state of needing to do something, yet never clear on what truly mattered. Then one day, by chance, I came across the Japanese philosophy of minimalism. And unexpectedly, from the tiniest things, like the way they fold clothes or the way they breathe, I began to understand simplicity. It's not about cutting everything out, but about keeping only what holds real meaning. Today, I want to share with you the 8 habits that quietly transformed my life. Habits that made my space tidier, but more importantly, made my mind calmer and clearer. Each habit is a small step, but if you walk them steadily, you'll find yourself returning to a life that's simple, profound, and truly yours. And trust me, the 6th habit will surprise you, because it's not about what you need to do, but about where you stop and breathe. Ready? Let's begin with the simplest thing. 1. Clean your room. I used to think I wasn't the messy type, until one morning when sunlight streamed through the window and revealed everything scattered across my desk. A coffee cup that had been empty for 2 days, a few notebooks left open halfway, my glasses lying next to a tangled charging cable. I stood there for a moment, then sighed. I'll clean it up tonight. But as I turned away, I realized my mind was just as cluttered as that desk. There's a very Japanese principle I once stumbled upon in an old book, a place for everything. It sounds as simple as a mother's advice, but the more I thought about it, the more I saw it as not just organization, but a way of living. When everything has its own place, the mind begins to settle too. You know, according to a study by UCLA, living in a messy environment can raise cortisol, the stress hormone, by up to 25%. A pile of unfolded clothes, a stack of unsorted papers. That's all it takes to make us feel drained without even knowing why. And that's when I decided to try something simple. Every night before bed, I'd spend exactly 5 minutes tidying up. Not cleaning the whole room, just putting things back where they belong. Shoes on the rack, books lined neatly, clothes back in the closet. I started with my desk. And strangely, after just one night, my mind felt as clear as that empty tabletop. No more sense of unfinished tasks, no more unnecessary noise. Just a quiet morning, ready to welcome a new day. After a week, I didn't have to think about it anymore. My hands moved on their own. Cleaning stopped being a chore and became a small ritual, almost like meditation. Gentle, slow, and deep. I realized that when we care for our space, we are quietly caring for ourselves. No big changes needed. Just one small action, repeated every day, and the mind gradually becomes lighter, clearer, more spacious. Cleaning your room doesn't make you a minimalist, but it is the first doorway, opening to a world where everything, including emotions and thoughts, finds its rightful place. And when your space is finally calm, you begin to see more clearly what truly matters. 2. Distinguish what matters. One of the hardest questions I've ever asked myself turned out to be the one that sounded easiest. Is this really important? I used to be great at being busy. A packed schedule, endless to-do lists, constant phone notifications. But inside, I felt empty, as if I was moving non-stop, without knowing where I was going. Much later, when I read about the concept of ikigai, the Japanese reason for being, I finally paused and asked, if there's one thing truly worth waking up for every morning, what is it? And why have I never taken the time to recognize it? Marie Kondo has a famous question. Does this spark joy? I realized that question isn't just for clothes or objects. It can also apply to the things we do, the people we meet, and even the habits we keep long after they've stopped fitting who we are. I did something very simple. I wrote down 10 things I usually do every day, then quietly asked myself, is this really necessary? Some answers surprised me. So many things I thought were must-dos were just unconscious habits. Scrolling through social media, checking email 10 times a day, saying yes to plans I didn't really want. According to one interesting statistic, the average adult makes 35,000 decisions every day. The more choices we face, the more exhausted our brain becomes. And when everything is treated as important, nothing truly is. So I began trying the 80-20 rule, focusing my energy on the 20% of things that truly matter, and bravely letting go of the rest. The results surprised me. I did less, but I lived more fully. I was more present, lighter. Of course, it's not always easy. I still get tempted by things that seem useful, like buying something just in case. The peak was my closet, so full I couldn't fit anything else. Yet every morning I'd stand in front of it and sigh, I have nothing to wear. Thinking back, I'm sure some of those shirts were wondering, hey, why am I even here? But distinguishing what matters isn't about forcing yourself to live strictly. It's about awareness, about learning to step back and observe your life like a dear friend. It's about daring to ask, what am I truly living for? And is that really mine? From the moment you know what is enough, what is real, and what is truly worth it, every choice after that becomes so much lighter. And that lightness will guide you naturally into the next habit, where consumption no longer begins with the question, what do I want? But rather, do I really need this? 3. Conscious consumption. I used to have a very dangerous habit that I thought was harmless at the time. Every time I felt bored, I'd open my phone and scroll to see what I needed. The feeling of adding something to the cart, waiting a few days, then unboxing it, brought a short burst of happiness, like a piece of sugar candy. But, sugar is sweet, yet it doesn't nourish anyone. I only truly woke up when I moved houses. I sat in the middle of a room full of boxes, exhausted, and suddenly realized there were so many things I once really wanted that now I didn't even know whether to take or give away. And the more I looked, the more regret I felt. Not just regret over the money, but the time I had traded to buy things I barely ever used. The Japanese have a beautiful word, mottainai, the sorrow of seeing waste. But what's special is that they don't just regret money. They feel regret for the energy, the materials, the human effort, and even the life of the object itself. An unwritten piece of paper deserves respect. An old shirt that's still beautiful deserves to be worn until the end of its life. I began learning to consume more slowly. Every time I wanted to buy something, I asked myself 3 questions. Do I really need it? How many times will I use it? And can it replace something I already own? Those seemingly simple questions made me pause just long enough not to rush. I also tried a small trick that turned out to be incredibly effective, the 24-hour rule. For anything that wasn't truly urgent, I'd leave it there and come back a day later. You'd be surprised to know that about 70% of the things you thought were must-haves yesterday no longer seem appealing today. And as I began choosing more carefully, something interesting happened. I bought less, but felt more satisfied. I chose one really good shirt instead of 5 cheap ones. I spent on a pair of shoes built to last, instead of 4 that looked good online but wore out fast. My space felt lighter, and I no longer felt the need to keep up with anyone. I'm not saying you have to stop shopping or live frugally. Just let consumption become an act of awareness. Let each item enter your life as a mindful choice, not to fill space, but because it truly serves a purpose. Because you're not just buying an object, you're trading your time, your attention, and your life energy for it. And once you understand that, you naturally want to keep only what is simple yet meaningful. But then, after you've cleared your room, refined your actions, and learned to consume consciously, there's still something quietly draining your focus every single day. Something you might not have noticed yet. 4. Detox your attention. There's something no one ever taught me growing up, that my attention also needs to be protected like my most precious asset, because wherever you place your attention, you are giving your life to that place. But in a world where phones buzz every few minutes, notifications light up like fireworks, and social media competes for every glance, keeping your mind peaceful has become an art of living. I used to think I was good at multitasking, replying to emails while scrolling through Instagram, with YouTube playing in the background. The result? I sent the wrong attachment, couldn't remember what I'd just seen on Instagram, and YouTube played for an hour without me being able to recall a single sentence. In truth, multitasking is just a fancy way of doing several things poorly at once. Until one day, I came across a beautiful concept in Japanese culture, mono no aware, the gentle sensitivity to the fleeting nature of things. It made me pause, because if everything passes so quickly, then maybe each moment we live deserves to be more complete. And to live fully, you can't divide yourself into pieces. According to a recent statistic, the average adult checks their phone 96 times a day, meaning roughly every 10 minutes, their focus is interrupted. Imagine you're painting a picture, and every few brushstrokes someone taps your shoulder asking, "Hey, any new updates?" How can you stay focused in that state? I began trying something that sounds outdated in today's world. Single tasking, doing only one thing at a time. When eating, just eat. When working, just work. When walking, just walk. No podcasts, no messages. It sounds simple, yet my productivity rose by nearly 40%, and my stress levels dropped noticeably. I also quietly cleaned up my attention space, turned off unnecessary notifications, unfollowed accounts that made me feel negative, set specific times to check messages instead of reacting instantly. And most importantly, I created small pockets of silence, where there's no sound, no signals, just space for the mind to breathe. The interesting thing is, when you become less scattered, you don't just work better. You start noticing the little things you once overlooked. The afternoon light on the wall, the sound of a leaf touching the ground, a calm feeling inside when you no longer have to chase anything. Because in the end, what exhausts us isn't too much work. It's our mind being pulled in too many directions. And when you learn to purify your attention, you're quietly reclaiming a very precious part of yourself. But to keep that silence lasting, you'll need a steadier anchor, not from the outside, but from the core within you. 5. Trust in your own values. There was a time when I lived as if I were trying to please the whole world. I bought the things others said were must-haves, said what I thought people wanted to hear, and worked hard just to be praised. But the more recognition I received, the more lost I felt, as if I were standing in the middle of a crowd, smiling, without knowing who that smile belonged to. Until one day, I read a Japanese proverb, "Nana korobiya oki," fall 7 times, stand up 8. That saying made me think for a long time, because to stand up the 8th time, you have to know what you're standing up for. Without a core value within, you'll be swept away by everything around you. Trends, expectations, others' opinions, until you can no longer recognize the sound of your own voice. I started a small exercise. I wrote down the 5 values most important to me: honesty, creativity, freedom, gratitude, and learning. Then I looked back at my life and asked, am I really living according to these? The answer, not entirely. I realized there were too many things I did not out of love, but out of fear of being judged. Too many choices made just to fit in, not because they were truly right for me. According to a study from Harvard University, people who live in alignment with their core values are 43% happier than those who live to please others. It sounds like a dry statistic, but it reflects something deeply human. When you live truthfully with yourself, you no longer have to pretend, and that lightness becomes the foundation of peace. I remember a time when I was terrified of being misunderstood. Every time someone disagreed with me, I questioned myself, trying to adjust to be more acceptable. But the more I tried, the more I lost connection with who I was. Eventually, I stopped. I wrote one sentence and stuck it to my desk. I don't need to be perfect in everyone's eyes. I just need to be honest with myself. From that day, everything became clearer. I began saying no to things that didn't fit, doing less but going deeper, and feeling more real. Believing in your own values isn't pride, it's calmness. It's knowing who you are, where you stand, and what's worth holding on to. The Japanese call it shin the core, the truth, the center within each person. When you live from that place, life, no matter how simple, feels whole, because everything you do carries the imprint of you. And when that foundation is firm, you realize peace no longer comes from doing more, but from stopping, breathing, and being fully present with yourself. 6. Breathe and focus. I used to think breathing was something automatic, like blinking or a heartbeat. But then one day in the middle of a tense meeting, I suddenly realized I was holding my breath, not on purpose. My body had just unconsciously tensed up from the pressure. At what point did something as simple and natural as breathing become something I forgot to do? The Japanese have a beautiful concept, kokyu, the art of conscious breathing. For them, breathing isn't just a biological function, it's a way of living. Your breath reflects your rhythm of life. When you breathe quickly, your mind rushes. When you breathe deeply, your inner world slows down. A kendo master will never strike while breathing hastily. A tea master will never pour water before their mind has settled. Modern science says the same thing. When under stress, the body enters a fight or flight mode. The heart races, breathing becomes shallow. But by simply adjusting your breath, slow, steady, deep, the brain releases hormones that calm the nervous system. No medicine, no help needed, just one conscious breath. I started practicing the 4-7-8 technique. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7, exhale for 8. 4 rounds each morning before starting my day, and 4 more before bed. After a week, not only did I sleep better, but my mind felt clearer. The restless, nameless tension faded. I stopped reacting impulsively to every situation. Once, while driving, someone recklessly cut me off. Before, I would have stayed angry for hours, but that time, instead of reacting, I simply paused and took 3 deep breaths. It might sound silly, but it truly worked. I kept driving, leaving the anger behind instead of carrying it through the rest of the day. And what's fascinating is that when you focus on your breath, you're also learning to focus on the present, no longer drifting with old thoughts, no longer lost between past and future, just here, in this very moment, feeling life as it unfolds. A Japanese monk once said, "With just one deep breath, you can return to yourself." And sometimes that return is enough to begin again, no matter how chaotic the world outside may be. Breathing won't help you control the world, but it helps you control how you show up in it. And sometimes, that grounded presence is exactly what others need from you, more than any advice or action. But no matter how calm you become, if you're surrounded by people who constantly drain your energy, then the next step is something you can't overlook. 7. Choose your friends. There was a long period when I kept wondering why I often felt tired for no clear reason. I ate well, slept enough, and wasn't overworked. Yet, every evening I still felt drained, until I started paying closer attention to the conversations I was having. And I discovered that some people, though they didn't mean to, always carried a gray cloud into my life. The Japanese have a saying, "Nanakorobi ya oki," fall 7 times, stand up 8. But to be able to stand up that many times, you need people around you who will reach out a hand, not those who pull you down. I once heard a quote from Jim Rohn that I thought was a joke at first. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But then, after 80 years of research, Harvard University came to a similar conclusion. The quality of your relationships determines 90% of your happiness. And this isn't just emotional, it's also physiological. For example, if your close friends live a healthy lifestyle, there's a high chance you will too. On the other hand, if they're often negative, complaining, or procrastinating, you're likely to be influenced without realizing it. One statistic shocked me. If your friend is obese, your chances of becoming obese increase by 57%. It sounds harsh, but psychological and behavioral alignment within close groups is real, and it also has a positive side. If the people around you are optimistic, you're 25% more likely to feel happier yourself. I didn't think I needed to cut anyone off, but I began adjusting how I allocated my time and energy. I reduced the meetings that left me feeling heavy afterward. I added more conversations with people who inspired me, even if just for a few minutes online. And most importantly, I learned to cherish the presence of those who truly cared. Few, but deep. Honestly, there was a time I thought I was a positive person, until I realized I was spending over an hour a day reading negative news. Turns out, I had been befriending a whole world of tension without knowing it. Now, I only read the news for 15 minutes a day, just enough to stay informed, but not enough to lose my peace. Choosing friends isn't just about choosing who to walk with. It's about choosing the version of yourself you're becoming. Because we are creatures of connection, and the right connections can lift you up like the wind, or weigh you down like stone. And after all these habits, decluttering your space, clarifying what matters, consuming consciously, protecting your attention, living by your values, breathing deeply, and surrounding yourself with the right people, you've already built a simpler, more focused life. But there's still one more thing, one small thing, that can completely change the direction of your days. 8. Ask better questions. If there's one habit that has completely changed the way I live, it's not waking up early, meditating, or planning my day. It's learning how to ask questions. It may sound simple, but it's truly an art. The Japanese have a saying that stayed with me, "Shitsumon wa kotae yorimo taisetsu." The question is more important than the answer, and the longer I live, the more I see how true that is. Because a good question doesn't just lead you to the right answer, it opens entirely new paths of thought. Einstein once said that if he had an hour to solve a problem, he would spend 55 minutes finding the right question and only 5 minutes finding the answer. I tried applying that to my everyday life, and the transformation came faster than I expected. Instead of asking, "Why don't I have time?" I asked, "What am I spending my time on?" The first question made me feel stuck, but the second made me feel in control. Instead of asking, "Why am I not happy?" I asked, "What truly makes me happy?" They sound similar, but the energy each question creates is completely different. One complains, the other explores. I started a small habit. Every Sunday night, I'd spend 10 minutes writing down 3 questions. What made me happiest this week? What do I want to change next week? And am I living in alignment with my values? Just 3 questions, but enough to slow down and listen to myself more deeply. A study from the University of Pennsylvania found that people who regularly ask themselves questions are 60% better at problem solving and 40% more satisfied with their lives. The reason isn't that they're smarter. It's that they know when to pause and reorient. I remember once going through something unpleasant. Instead of asking, "Why me?" for the first time I asked, "What can I learn from this?" And instantly the feeling of being a victim faded. It was replaced by a quiet sense of growth, subtle, but enough to keep me from falling into negativity. We often search for answers, forgetting that sometimes what we really need is just the right question. A question that opens space instead of closing it. A question that makes you listen instead of react. A question soft but powerful enough to pull you back to the present moment and to yourself. And if you want to begin a minimalist journey, not just in your physical space, but in your mind, start with a question. It could be, "Do I really need this?" Or, "What is enough for me?" Or simply, "What am I living for today?" Because in the end, every deep transformation begins with something that seems small, an honest question. And when you ask the right one, life begins to answer in ways you never expected. So, I've just shared with you 8 minimalist habits that have helped make my life simpler, lighter, and most of all, more focused. From decluttering your space, cleansing your attention, consuming consciously, to choosing the right people and asking better questions. Each one is a small step, but when connected together, they form a solid foundation for living more truthfully with yourself. And remember, you don't need to apply them all at once. Just choose 1 or 2 habits that feel right for you right now. Practice slowly, naturally, without pressure, because minimalism isn't a project to complete, it's a way of living. The further you go, the lighter it becomes. I'm really curious, where will you start? Will you tidy up your living space or try asking a meaningful question this weekend? Share it with me in the comments below. I'd love to read your story, and if you're interested in saving money without living frugally, don't miss the next video. I'll be sharing how applying minimalist living has helped me save over 30% each month, while feeling more fulfilled and freer than ever. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next video.